This is Rummy's Corner. Coming up on September 21st at Wembley Stadium, in a heavyweight championship fight that will be streamed live on DAZN pay-per-view, IBF heavyweight champion Daniel Dubois will put his title on the line for the very first time when he squares off against former two-time heavyweight champion Anthony Joshua. Let me tell you, this is a damn interesting matchup at this particular point in time. If you would have asked me a year ago who would win between AJ and Dubois, I would have said Joshua, without hesitation. Truth be told, I was never particularly impressed by Dubois in the lead up to and the immediate aftermath of his fight with Usyk. But since that loss against Usyk, Dubois has genuinely shown me something that leads me to believe this is a true 50-50 type of matchup, which tends to go against the general consensus in my experience, where most observers are expecting AJ to win. I think an awful lot of people are sleeping on the very real possibility that Dubois could emerge victorious in this one. AJ had what I consider to be his big breakthrough victory all the way back in 2015 when he stopped fellow undefeated British contender Dillian Whyte. Next time out, he stopped Charles Martin to win the IBF heavyweight title. After making two title defenses, AJ went up against former long-reigning heavyweight champion, the great Vladimir Klitschko. That, to me, remains AJ's signature career victory to this day. It was an incredible action-packed battle with several dramatic shifts in momentum. Joshua was doing very well early and he dropped Vladimir hard in round 5. Klitschko then exhibited the skills and championship heart that enabled him to become one of the longest reigning heavyweight champions ever. Klitschko was emboldened by the knockdown, and in the very next round he scored a beautiful knockdown of his own. Klitschko's experience took over, and per his trademark, he was boxing effectively in methodical fashion. But AJ persevered, and slowly but surely, he was battling his way back, and he rallied late and really started coming on strong before earning the dramatic late round stoppage. AJ had overcome adversity. AJ defended his IBF title, and he also won the vacant WBA heavyweight title. AJ won 3 more title fights after that, which included a unanimous decision victory against Joseph Parker, where AJ added the WBO belt to his existing collection. And it also included a mighty impressive highlight reel knockout against the highly regarded Alexander Povetkin. By that point, Joshua was a perfect 22-0, and he had won 7 title fights in a row with 6 consecutive title defenses. And he was the unified IBF, WBA, WBO heavyweight world champion. His next fight was supposed to be against Jarrell Miller, but he was removed from the card, and Andy Ruiz Jr. stepped in as a late replacement. The rest is history. Ruiz scored the shocking upset, and this happened just a few days after I dropped a video saying something to the effect, any heavyweight fight involving AJ, Fury, or Wilder that isn't against one of the other 3 is a complete waste of time. Or something like that. What the hell do I know? I ain't exactly Quasimodo over here. AJ rebounded from the loss when he beat Ruiz in their rematch by lopsided 12-round unanimous decision. It was a very strong performance from AJ, and he thoroughly outboxed Ruiz in the rematch without needing to take things out of first gear, which was in stark contrast to their original encounter. Then AJ scored a damn fine knockout against Pulev, and after that he lost the back-to-back fights against Usyk. Now, there is no shame in losing against a bona fide all-time great like Usyk. And to his credit, I thought AJ was a bit more competitive in the rematch, even though Usyk clearly won again. But the questions surrounding AJ in the aftermath mainly centered on his mental state. In short, whether or not he still had that inner strength and determination, that inner something special that allowed him to persevere and overcome adversity in the tremendous victory against Klitschko. AJ went on to win 4 fights in a row, and in my opinion, he has looked better in each and every fight since losing 3 of 5 during his career worst stretch. First, he beat Jermaine Franklin. And I thought his critics were overly harsh after that one, where I thought AJ looked good and did what he had to do. A good rebound win, but for many, if not most, it didn't do much to remove doubts regarding where he was mentally. Then he fought Robert Helenius, who had just fought a week earlier in a medieval castle. Helenius was at times effective in making AJ look a bit reluctant, but Joshua settled matters impressively and decisively with a brutal knockout. AJ still had doubters who questioned his mental state, where people were critical that it took AJ 7 rounds to stop a guy Wilder stopped in 1. And again, I thought the criticisms were a bit overstated. Then AJ had the dominant effort against Valine, and in my view, Otto was a top 10 heavyweight at that time following his win over Gassiev, but AJ made easy work of him. Valine's corner stopped the fight after round 5, and the fact that the fight didn't have an especially satisfying ending did little to silence his critics, but I thought AJ looked outstanding in that one. And then against Ngannou, again, AJ blasted him out with a brilliant display of power, but critics pointed out that he wasn't a real boxer. But Tyson Fury kind of opened that door. And I think AJ fighting Ngannou positioned him nicely in the event Fury won his first fight with Usyk, but that didn't happen. So the game of one-upmanship didn't carry over into a long-awaited showdown between AJ and Fury, which still may or may not happen down the road. I understand the spirit of what AJ's harshest critics have been saying, and I think questions about whether his heart was truly in it were valid in the aftermath of the Usyk rematch. Since then, I have largely been impressed by AJ's recent run. At the same time, I do believe, with the possible exception of Ngannou, none of these guys were really known as devastating punchers. Helenius could punch, but he was generally known more as an accumulation guy. But he could punch, and Ngannou's power is trickier to judge. He dropped Fury to be sure, but then again, so did Steve Cunningham, and even more recently, so did Usyk. In the case of Ngannou, it never really mattered, because AJ ended it before Ngannou had the chance to land anything meaningful. The point I guess I'm making here is that I 100% believe that Dubois has the best blend of power and the ability to deliver that power than anyone AJ has faced since the Ruiz rematch, or perhaps since he beat Povetkin, or perhaps even since way back in 2017, when AJ showed incredible championship heart in his victory against Klitschko. Dubois, on the other hand, I had never been particularly impressed by him dating back to the Joyce fight. To me, in the same way Dillian Whyte provided AJ with what I consider to be his big breakthrough victory, Joe Joyce was supposed to represent that for Dubois, but it didn't happen. Dubois looked good at times, to be sure, and in fairness to Dubois, he suffered nerve damage and a broken orbital bone in that one, so I thought those calling him a quitter were harsh, but I wasn't very impressed with Dubois, and that was back before Joyce had his career-defining victory against Parker. Then I thought Dubois was mighty fortunate to get the WBA eliminator in his very next fight, which eventually led to him winning the regular WBA belt against Trevor Bryan, which was not a major world title, but would land him a mandatory spot for Usyk. Before that happened, however, Dubois was fortunate he survived the early onslaught from Kevin Lerena, where again, in fairness to Dubois, he suffered the ACL injury in that one. But nothing to this point led me to believe Dubois would have any chance whatsoever against Usyk. And Usyk won the fight in pretty dominant fashion to score the knockout. And that was Dubois' only major title fight to date. So if you would have asked me then and there, who wins between AJ and Dubois, I would have dismissively written Dubois' chances off almost completely. Not unlike I did with late replacement Ruiz all those years ago. But since that time, Dubois has come across as highly motivated and determined, where he has proven his heart in 2 challenging fights. On the Boxing Day of Reckoning, Dubois put forth a strong performance against Big Baby Miller. Dubois was able to cleverly outwork and outmaneuver Miller, whose plotting efforts were no match for the superior skill set exhibited by Dubois. But it wasn't always easy, where Miller at times imposed his will and landed some thudding shots. Dubois absorbed them well, maintained his focus, and continued executing effectively. Dubois ultimately managed to get Miller in trouble late in the 10th and final round, and Dynamite Dubois exploded on him, which prompted the stoppage. Then back in June, he had the fight against undefeated contender Filip Hrgović, who was a longtime IBF mandatory, universally recognized as a top 10 heavyweight. That was a very brutal encounter, where Hrgović was landing some flush right hands early, and Dubois was absorbing them well and fiercely firing back, with more success as the rounds unfolded. By the second half of the fight, Dubois started becoming more effective, and he unloaded a more spirited offense, resulting in increased damage on the eyes of Hrgović. Dubois started battering Hrgović in round 8, and the fight was ultimately stopped. Dubois became the IBF interim champion, but since that time, Usyk vacated the IBF, and Dubois was elevated to the real McCoy. Daniel Dubois is the reigning IBF heavyweight champion, despite the fact he never won a major championship fight, similar to Ken Norton with the WBC belt in the late 70s. Now, a lot of people believe that, considering the ease with which Hrgović was landing his right, what happens when AJ starts landing all those big right hands early? The thought process being that AJ hits harder and more accurately than Hrgović. Ergo, AJ is going to knock him out early. After all, AJ is far more skilled and talented than the likes of Miller and Hrgović. Eventually, Dubois will fold. The flip side is that, considering AJ has not fought someone who is as dangerous and powerful as Dubois in some time, Dubois himself is generally proven to have a pretty solid chin over the first half of 12 rounders, and he will eventually land big where AJ will freeze and revert into panic mode when someone like Dubois lands on him. Or perhaps Dubois lands first, putting AJ into the very same panic mode where he falls apart. Those scenarios in favor of AJ and Dubois all feel plausible to me. AJ has had 2 really brutal wars in his career, where he received a great deal of punishment against guys who can punch. The win against Vladimir Klitschko, and the loss in the first Ruiz fight. I'm not meaning to suggest that Usyk cannot punch, nor am I suggesting that AJ did not receive a great deal of punishment against Usyk, because he did. But the Vlad fight and the first Ruiz fight, those to me were wars. Whereas the Usyk fights were systematic and methodical beatings in a prolonged tactical chess match. Point being, I do not believe AJ has been tested quite the same way since the first Ruiz bout, where he is forced into an all-out war. Circling back, I believe Dubois has the best blend of power and the ability to deliver that power than anyone AJ has fought in a very long time. Beyond that, Dubois has proven to be hungry following the Usyk loss. He has emerged victorious in 2 taxing battles where he was tested, and AJ hasn't really been tested quite the same way by guys like Ngannou, Valine, Helenius, or Franklin. I don't think anyone on his 4-fight winning streak has really pushed AJ, and even Usyk did not push him in the same way that Ruiz did, and AJ hasn't really had to face that type of adversity since. I, for one, do not believe AJ is just gonna blast through Dubois early. He could, and maybe he will, but I think Dubois is durable and determined and hungry enough that he will be battling with everything he has. I believe the confidence that comes with entering the ring as champion will help elevate Dubois to new heights. At the same time, if AJ is truly determined to become a 3-time champion, and he is not underestimating the threat before him, it's going to be very difficult for Dubois to win, where he'd need to show a new level to his game. After all, AJ does have the clear advantage in big fight experience. I truly believe this is a 50-50 fight. To the victor belongs the spoils, and let me tell you a couple 3 things. Derek Chisora recently scored the upset against Juggernaut Joe Joyce. Martin Bakole recently scored another heavyweight upset against Jared Anderson. these things happen in threes. And since I truly do believe this is a 50-50 fight, allow me to say, I honestly believe victories against Miller and Hrgovic have Dubois better prepared for the moment than the nature of AJ's victories against Valine and Ngannou. I was fully intending to pick AJ in this one, largely based on the edge and big fight experience. But I actually convinced myself otherwise during the creation of this video preview. I now believe Dubois will indeed rise to the occasion. There are no scraps in my scrapbook, so for my official prediction, I am taking Daniel Dubois by 7th round stoppage. But as always, what the hell do I know? I ain't exactly Quasimodo over here. But whatever happens, I sure am fired up. September 21st, live on DAZN pay-per-view. For anyone who is not subscribed to DAZN, I left a link in the description. Simply click the link in the description to sign up for DAZN. Best of luck to both Anthony Joshua and Daniel Dubois. Who do you think will win? Please share your thoughts in the comments section. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed and have a wonderful night. This is Rummy's Corner.
You know, Quasimodo predicted all this.